The galaxy's most desolate corners often held the darkest secrets, and the Varnax cluster was no exception. Known for its unstable asteroid fields and uncharted territory, it was the perfect hunting ground for pirates. For Captain Corvin Thorne, however, it was just another dangerous job. His ship, the Starblaze, darted through the asteroid field with practiced precision, its hull narrowly avoiding collisions. Corvin's mission was urgent, to rescue Prince Telion of Nyradia, a royal who had sent out a desperate distress call after being captured by the notorious pirate clan, the Ravagers. The job wasn't glamorous, but the reward, a hefty sum of Nyradian gold, made it worth the risk. Corvin approached the Ravagers' mothership, a hulking mass of patched-together scrap metal, and engaged its docking mechanisms. His weapons were primed, his plan simple: get in, get the prince, and get out. Once aboard, chaos erupted. Ravagers spilled into the dimly lit corridors, their guttural roars echoing through the ship. Corvin, armed with his plasma rifle, moved with deadly efficiency. Every shot was precise, every move calculated. He carved a path through the enemy ranks, his years as a mercenary evident in his unwavering focus. Finally, he reached the ship's brig. Behind the reinforced bars stood Prince Telion, tall and regal even in captivity. His golden scales shimmered faintly under the dim light, marking him as unmistakably Nyradian. "Took you long enough," the prince said, though his relief was evident. Corvin smirked. Royalty's always so patient. Using a small explosive charge, Corvin blew the lock and freed Telion. "Stick close," he ordered. Together they fought their way back to the Starblaze, escaping the Ravagers' clutches just as reinforcements swarmed the docking bay. As the ship broke free of the pirate's gravity tether and launched into hyperspace, Telion exhaled deeply, his royal composure cracking. "You've saved my life, human. For that, I owe you more than gratitude." Corvin, slumped in the pilot's chair, chuckled. "I didn't do it for free, Your Highness. Just pay what you promised." But Telion's smile was enigmatic. "You'll get far more than what I promised. You'll get a treasure beyond measure." Corvin raised an eyebrow, sensing the prince's words carried more weight than mere gratitude. Back on Nyradia, Corvin was greeted as a hero. The Nyradian capital was a breathtaking city of bioluminescent towers and floating bridges, its golden hues reflecting off the crystalline lakes below. But Corvin was wary. He'd learned long ago that no job, especially one involving royalty, ended cleanly. In the grand hall of the palace, Prince Telion addressed the gathered nobles and officials, his voice commanding and melodic. "This human, Captain Corvin Thorne, risked his life to save mine. His bravery is unmatched, and his reward must be equally unparalleled." Corvin leaned against a polished pillar, unimpressed by the pomp. "Just give me the credits and I'll be on my way." Telion turned to him, his golden eyes glinting with a mischievous edge. "You'll receive your credits, Captain, but first I have something else to offer, a gift of immeasurable value." The crowd murmured in anticipation as a pair of ornate doors swung open. A figure stepped into the hall, her tall frame drawing gasps from the assembled nobles. Princess Ylira, Telion's sister, was a stark contrast to her brother. Where Telion's golden scales and symmetrical features were celebrated as the pinnacle of Nyradian beauty, Ylira's deep blue scales, asymmetrical features, and towering presence were considered unconventional at best, unattractive at worst. Ylira's sharp gaze swept the room before landing on Corvin. "So this is the human mercenary my brother speaks so highly of," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "I hope you live up to the stories." Corvin, taken aback, looked to Telion. "What's this?" Telion smiled broadly. "You saved my life, Captain. I offer you my sister as a token of my gratitude." The hall erupted in murmurs and whispers. Ylira's expression remained impassive, though a flicker of annoyance crossed her face. Corvin, however, was outright stunned. "You can't just give someone as a gift," he said, his tone sharp. Telion waved his hand dismissively. "It is an honor. Ylira is skilled in diplomacy, combat, and strategy. She will be an invaluable ally." Ylira's gaze softened slightly as she stepped closer to Corvin. "I am no one's property, Captain, but if you'll have me, I'd like to join you. Perhaps it's time I left this palace and saw the galaxy for myself." Corvin studied her for a long moment, the weight of the situation sinking in. Finally, he nodded. "All right, but you're not a gift. You're a partner, and you'd better pull your weight." Ylira's lips twitched in a faint smile. I wouldn't dream of doing otherwise. As they left the palace together, Corvin couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just become far more complicated, and perhaps far more interesting. The first few days aboard the Starblaze with Princess Ylira proved challenging. Corvin had anticipated some level of awkwardness. After all, the woman had been handed to him like a ceremonial trinket, but Ylira was anything but passive. She moved through his ship with an assertive presence, asking sharp questions and offering unsolicited opinions about everything, from his choice of routes to the state of his weaponry. "You call this an arsenal?" she asked, holding up one of his plasma rifles. "This design is obsolete. You'll be outmatched in a firefight against any competent force." Corvin, who was in the middle of recalibrating the ship's navigational systems, glanced at her with a raised eyebrow. "Not everyone has access to palace tech. This obsolete arsenal has kept me alive for years." "Barely," she shot back, inspecting the rifle. "The scarring on the barrel alone suggests overuse." Corvin sighed. "You're welcome to upgrade it if you're such an expert." To his surprise, Ylira did just that. By the time they reached their next destination, she had re-engineered 3 of his weapons, incorporating Nyradian technology that enhanced precision and firepower. She presented the upgrades with a mix of pride and professionalism, her asymmetrical face lit with the faintest hint of satisfaction. "All right," Corvin admitted as he tested the modifications. "You're not just talk." Ylira tilted her head, her tone neutral but her eyes gleaming. "I told you, I'm here to pull my weight." Their first mission together was a routine job, delivering medical supplies to a war-torn outpost on the desert planet Ralith. But what should have been a straightforward drop-off turned dangerous when local raiders ambushed them at the landing site. Corvin and Ylira fought side by side, their different fighting styles blending seamlessly. Corvin's precise shots paired perfectly with Ylira's swift, calculated movements as she used her staff weapon to disable attackers. After the dust settled, Corvin looked at her with newfound respect. "You've got skills." Ylira wiped the sweat from her brow, her expression unchanging. "I told you, Captain, I'm not a gift, I'm a partner." As their partnership deepened, so did the complexity of their missions. Corvin and Ylira were hired by a coalition of miners on the frozen moon of Karsus to investigate a series of mysterious disappearances. The job paid well, but the risks were high. Karsus was notorious for its treacherous ice storms and hostile wildlife, and the miners' descriptions of shadowy figures lurking at the edges of their camps hinted at something more sinister. Their investigation led them deep into the moon's icy caverns, where they discovered an abandoned research facility. The facility's records revealed experiments conducted by a rogue faction of Nyradian scientists, experiments that had unleashed bioengineered predators capable of blending into the icy terrain. As they delved deeper, the creatures attacked. Nearly invisible against the frosted walls, the predators were fast, intelligent, and deadly. Corvin and Ylira fought to keep them at bay, their weapons barely giving them an edge. One creature lunged at Corvin, its claws slashing through his armor. He staggered, his blaster slipping from his grip. Ylira acted without hesitation. Using her modified staff weapon, she drove the creature back with a burst of energy, then pulled Corvin to his feet. "Stay with me, Captain," she said, her voice firm but tinged with concern. They managed to retreat to a fortified section of the facility, where Ylira patched up Corvin's wounds using supplies from a nearby medkit. As she worked, Corvin studied her, his earlier reservations about her melting away. "You're not what I expected," he admitted. Ylira didn't look up. "Because I'm not what you wanted." "Because you're better," he said simply. She paused, her hands hovering over the bandages. For a moment, her composed facade cracked, and something softer emerged. "I've spent my whole life being underestimated," she said quietly, "by my people, by my family. I thought you'd be no different." "Well, you're wrong," Corvin said, wincing as she tightened the bandage. "And I'll admit when I'm wrong, too. You're not just a partner. You're the reason we're getting out of here alive." Ylira smiled faintly, a rare but genuine expression. "Then let's make sure we do." Together, they devised a plan to lure the creatures into a trap. Using the facility's power core, they created an electromagnetic pulse that disrupted the predator's stealth abilities, rendering them visible. With Corvin's sharp shooting and Ylira's tactical precision, They eliminated the threat and secured the facility for the miners. As they left Karsus, their bond solidified by the trials they had faced, Corvin glanced at Ylira. "So what's next, partner?" She met his gaze, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Whatever the galaxy throws at us." For the first time in years, Corvin felt a sense of certainty, not just about his next mission, but about the person standing beside him. Their reputation as a formidable duo spread across the galaxy, and with it came more perilous assignments. Corvin and Ylira were approached by a shadowy figure in the bustling markets of Darvon Station, a place where whispers of treachery and alliances were traded as freely as goods. The figure, cloaked and careful not to show their face, spoke with a voice modulator. "There's a high-value target on the planet Vorthon. He's a rogue operative with sensitive data that could destabilize several systems. The job is simple. Bring him in alive." Corvin crossed his arms, his instincts kicking in. Alive means trouble. Who's hiring? "Someone with deep pockets and a need for discretion," the figure replied, sliding a data chip across the table. "The reward will be worth your while." Ylira studied the figure, her sharp gaze cutting through the secrecy. "And what aren't you telling us?" The figure hesitated, then leaned closer. "He's protected by people who will stop at nothing to keep him from talking." With little else to go on, they accepted the mission, traveling to Vorthon, a swamp-covered planet known for its labyrinthine terrain. The target, a former operative named Marin Drax, was holed up in an abandoned fortress deep within the wetlands. Navigating the treacherous environment tested their patience and their skills, with Ylira's Neradian tracking abilities proving invaluable. When they finally cornered Drax, the man was surprisingly calm. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice steady despite the weapons aimed at him. "You don't know who you're working for." "Spare me the drama," Corvin said. "We're here to deliver you, not swap stories." But Drax's words struck a chord with Ylira. As they prepared to leave the fortress, she noticed inconsistencies in the data they had been given, information that painted their mysterious employer in a darker light. "Corvin, I think we're being used," she said, her voice low as they marched Drax through the swamp. Corvin frowned. "Let's finish the job first, then we'll figure out the truth." But their decision to complete the mission came at a cost. Before they could deliver Drax, they were ambushed by a group of elite mercenaries sent by the same employer who had hired them. It was a double cross, and now they were the targets. The swamp became a battlefield, the dense vegetation and murky waters providing both cover and obstacles. Corvin and Ylira fought with precision, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed dance, but the mercenaries were skilled and heavily armed, forcing them into a desperate retreat. Drax, handcuffed and stumbling behind them, shouted, "I told you. They don't want me to talk. They want me dead, and you too." Ylira, dodging a plasma shot, growled, "Then maybe you should start talking." Drax explained as they ran, his words fragmented by the chaos. He had uncovered evidence of a conspiracy involving their employer, a powerful syndicate manipulating galactic politics. His knowledge made him a liability, and now Corvin and Ylira were caught in the crossfire. The mercenaries closed in, their superior numbers pressing Corvin and Ylira into a corner. Out of options, Ylira activated a prototype device she had been secretly developing, a Neradian cloaking field. It created a temporary distortion in the environment, masking their presence and allowing them to escape. Safe for the moment, Corvin confronted Drax. "You'd better hope this intel of yours is worth dying for." Drax handed over a data chip. "Everything you need is here. Names, locations, operations. But if you're smart, you'll destroy it and walk away." Corvin glanced at Ylira, who met his gaze with determination. "We're not walking away," she said. "This syndicate doesn't just threaten him. They threaten the balance of the galaxy." Returning to the Starblaze, they analyzed the data and discovered the syndicate's reach extended farther than they had imagined, implicating officials in every major system. It was a revelation that made their blood run cold. "You realize what this means," Corvin said. "If we go after them, we'll have the entire galaxy gunning for us." Ylira's expression was resolute. "Then we'll have to be smarter, faster, and better than all of them, together." Corvin nodded, a flicker of a smile breaking his grim expression. "You've got a knack for getting me into impossible situations." and you've got a knack for surviving them, she replied. With their course set and a new mission before them, they prepared to dismantle the syndicate piece by piece, knowing that the fight ahead would test not only their skills but the unshakable trust they had built. The data chip Drax had given them was a treasure trove of secrets and a death sentence. It exposed the syndicate's intricate network of corruption, linking planetary leaders, rogue military factions, and corporate overlords to a single, shadowy entity known only as the Core. Armed with this knowledge, Corvin and Ylira set their sights on dismantling the syndicate from within. Their first target was a high-ranking syndicate operative named Varel Drent, a logistics coordinator who controlled the flow of weapons and resources through the Telos Belt. Drent operated out of a heavily fortified asteroid base, and his elimination would sever a crucial artery of the syndicate's operations. "This isn't just a fight," Ylira said as she reviewed their plan aboard the Starblaze. "It's a statement. We need to make them feel vulnerable." "Agreed," Corvin replied, loading his weapons. "We hit fast and hard, then disappear before they can retaliate." The assault on Drent's base was a masterclass in precision. Using Ylira's cloaking field, they infiltrated the asteroid's perimeter undetected. Ylira's modifications to Corvin's equipment gave them an edge in the close quarters of the base, where syndicate guards patrolled with ruthless efficiency. They reached Drent's command center, only to find him surrounded by mercenaries. "You should have stayed in the shadows, Thorn," Drent sneered, recognizing Corvin. "Now you're just another problem for the syndicate to erase." Corvin smirked. "I'm harder to erase than you think." The ensuing firefight was brutal. Ylira's agility and strategic acumen allowed her to outmaneuver the mercenaries, while Corvin's combat experience made him a force of nature. When the dust settled, Drent lay incapacitated, his operations in ruins. As they extracted him, Drent issued a chilling warning. "You think you're making a difference? The Core sees everything. You'll never make it out alive." Ylira leaned in, her voice cold. "Then it's a good thing we're not afraid of the dark." With Drent's capture, Corvin and Ylira had gained a critical bargaining chip. Drent's knowledge of syndicate supply lines and safe houses would give them a decisive advantage. But their victory was short-lived. The syndicate retaliated swiftly, dispatching an elite strike team to intercept the Starblaze as it transported Drent to a secure location. The ambush came in the orbit of Perixus Prime, a barren planet with no strategic value, perfect for a covert assault. As Corvin and Ylira navigated the asteroid-dotted region, the strike team's ships descended upon them, cutting off their escape routes. "They were waiting for us," Corvin growled, gripping the controls tightly. "How?" Ylira glanced at Drent, who was shackled in the corner of the cockpit. "Because he told them," she said, her voice laced with suspicion. Drent smirked. "Did you really think the syndicate would let me rot in your custody?" Before they could respond, the Starblaze was hit by an ion blast, disabling its primary systems. The ship spun out of control, crashing into a massive asteroid. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered as Corvin and Ylira scrambled to regain control. "Brace for impact," Corvin shouted as the ship came to a screeching halt inside a natural cavern within the asteroid. As they assessed the damage, syndicate soldiers began boarding the ship. Corvin and Ylira prepared for a desperate fight. "This isn't just an ambush," Ylira said. "It's an execution." They fought fiercely, using the ship's corridors to their advantage. Corvin's tactical ingenuity and Ylira's adaptive combat skills kept the syndicate soldiers at bay, but the odds were stacked against them. In the chaos, Drent managed to free himself, taking advantage of the distraction to flee into the asteroid. "He's running," Ylira hissed. "We can't let him escape." Corvin nodded, reloading his plasma rifle. "Let's finish this." The pursuit led them deep into the asteroid's labyrinthine tunnels, where syndicate forces continued to press them. As they closed in on Drent, Ylira activated her cloaking field, masking their movements. They cornered him in a cavern illuminated by glowing crystals. "End of the line, Drent," Corvin said, his weapon trained on the operative. Drent smirked, his hand hovering over a detonator. "You think you've won? The Core always wins." Before he could activate the device, Ylira lunged forward, disarming him with a swift strike. Corvin secured the detonator, and together they incapacitated Drent. As they extracted him from the asteroid, the remaining Syndicate forces withdrew, likely ordered to regroup. Back aboard the Starblaze, Ylira turned to Corvin, her expression grim. "We've shaken the Syndicate, but Drent's right. The core is still out there, watching." Corvin leaned against the console, his gaze steady. "Then we'll keep pushing until we find it. The Syndicate wants a war? We'll give them one." With their resolve stronger than ever, Corvin and Ylira set a course for their next target, knowing that the fight against the Syndicate was far from over. But they also knew that together, they were unstoppable. Corvin and Ylira's relentless campaign against the Syndicate had pushed their enemies into retreat. But the true battle was only beginning. After interrogating Drent aboard the Starblaze, they learned the location of the core, a hidden command center buried deep within the gas-shrouded world of Vexeris Prime. The planet, perpetually cloaked in toxic storms, was said to be impenetrable, but Corvin and Ylira knew they had no choice. "We're walking into a trap," Corvin said as he studied the holographic map of Vexeris Prime. "They'll have the place locked down tighter than a black hole." Ylira's lips curled into a faint smirk. "Then we'll spring the trap and make it ours." They infiltrated Vexeris Prime under cover of the storms, using the ship's cloaking field to navigate through hostile airspace. As they approached the core, a massive structure built into the planet's rocky surface, their sensors picked up dozens of automated defense systems and patrols. "Subtle," Corvin muttered. "They're practically begging us to break in." Ylira studied the defenses, her sharp eyes scanning for weaknesses. "There," she said, pointing to a ventilation system barely large enough for a human to crawl through. "It leads directly into their main power grid." With no room for error, Corvin and Ylira executed a daring infiltration. They crawled through the vents, avoiding detection as the howling winds of Vexeris Prime masked their movements. Inside the core, they encountered advanced security drones and Syndicate operatives, but their combined skills carried them forward. The deeper they went, the more they realized how vast the core's operations were. Rows of terminals displayed real-time feeds from across the galaxy, monitoring political leaders, trade routes, and military movements. The Syndicate wasn't just controlling the galaxy's underbelly. They were steering its future. When they reached the command center, they found themselves face to face with the Syndicate's enigmatic leader. A figure clad in intricate armor stepped forward, their face obscured by a holographic mask. "You've come far, Captain Thorn, Princess Ylira," the figure said, their voice calm and measured. "But this is where your rebellion ends." The leader of the Syndicate, known only as the Architect, was as calculating as they were powerful. The core's command center erupted into chaos as automated defenses activated, drones swarmed, and Syndicate operatives closed in on Corvin and Ylira. "You're resourceful," the Architect said, their voice echoing over the chaos. "But you're only delaying the inevitable. The Syndicate's reach is infinite." Corvin and Ylira fought with unmatched determination, their bond and trust in each other carrying them through the relentless assault. Corvin's precise aim and Ylira's swift movements turned the tide of the battle, but the Architect was always one step ahead, using the core's advanced systems to outmaneuver them. Realizing brute force wouldn't win, Ylira focused on the core's power grid, her Nyradian abilities allowing her to interface directly with its systems. "Keep them off me," she shouted to Corvin as she worked. "I'm going to overload the grid and take this place down." Corvin nodded, his blaster cutting down wave after wave of drones and operatives. "You've got 2 minutes, tops." As Ylira hacked into the system, the Architect stepped forward, their calm demeanor replaced by a chilling resolve. "Do you think destroying this facility will stop us? The Syndicate is an idea. Ideas don't die." "Maybe not," Corvin retorted, firing a shot that forced the Architect to retreat. "But people like you sure do." Ylira's voice broke through the chaos. "I've got it. Corvin, get ready to run." The core's systems began to overload, sparks flying as terminals exploded and lights flickered. The Architect's voice rang out, their composure fracturing. "You'll regret this. You've only ensured your own destruction." Corvin grabbed Ylira's hand, pulling her toward the exit as the core collapsed around them. They raced through the crumbling facility, their path lit by the glow of destruction. As they reached the ship, the core erupted in a massive explosion, its fiery demise visible even through the thick storms of Vexaris Prime. Aboard the Starblaze, as they soared away from the planet, Corvin turned to Ylira. "That was close." Ylira, catching her breath, managed a faint smile. "Too close, but we did it." The core was destroyed, and with it, the Syndicate's central command. While their victory didn't guarantee the Syndicate's complete downfall, it sent a powerful message. No empire, no matter how vast, was invincible. As the ship sailed through the stars, Corvin looked at Ylira, his voice softer. "You've changed a lot since we first met." "So have you," she replied, her gaze steady, "and we're just getting started." Their bond, forged in fire and tested by the galaxy's darkest corners, was unbreakable. Together, they knew the fight wasn't over, but they also knew they would face whatever came next as equals, partners, and something even deeper. The stars ahead were endless, and so were their possibilities.